Now that the majority of the plastic work has been done for the forward superstructure, it is time to start working on the photo etch details. Although there is one plastic correction that I need to make. This splinter shield needs to be angled in slightly. So I'll just make that slight extension, and then I'll move on to the photo etch. That will be installing this box-like structure that goes over here, and installing support struts that go under the front of the Admiral's Bridge. Starting with the modifications to the upper air defense platform, I need to find a suitable piece of styrene stock. My guess is that 3.2mm stock will be the best bet, but if that is a bit too tall, I can always go down to 2mm styrene stock. 3.2 is a bit too tall. 2 is actually perfect. I'm not exactly sure how long these sections of stock should be, so I'm just going to estimate it, cut off 2 sections with the chopper and do a test fit. As long as they don't extend too far into the platform, I think it'll be okay. The initial cut was a bit long, so I trimmed them and made them a little bit shorter. The second time around, I'm happy with the length, so I can glue them down. To install these sections, I initially glue them in place using Revell Contact Professional, and then I use extra thin plastic cement to glue them to the deck. After giving the glue a short amount of time to dry, I then apply plastic putty to the seam line so that I can blend it in nicely. After the plastic putty has dried, I then remove the excess using a file. Once the excess putty has been removed, I then repaint the area. I paint the splinter shields in XF53, the color of HMS Hood's superstructure, and I paint the deck in XF82. This is the color that I'm using for Semtex. Now that the plastic modification is out of the way, I'll move on to the photo etch. First, I'll construct this small cube-like structure. Although folding a cube is not exactly complicated, I'm not entirely happy with this photo etch sheet. It is very thin, and you can see the consequence of very thin photo etch is that it has this slight curve on it which then needs to be bent back out. It also makes joining the edges together just that little bit more difficult. But as I said, fortunately this is simply a cube, so it is not going to be too difficult to construct. It just would have been nicer to have thicker photo etch. After folding the sides into position, I carefully hold them in place and then apply extra thin super glue to the inside of the joint to glue them together. Since this photo etch is very thin, I want to reinforce the bonds in the corners, so I add in additional extra thick super glue to provide a little bit more support. Now that the corners are glued together, I'm able to manipulate the sides to bend them to be straight, try and get that curve out of them. I don't usually apply putty to photo etch parts, but in this case, the way they scored the edges was to actually have cuts that go all the way through the photo etch, which means when you fold it, you get a almost sawtooth edge. That, to me, is undesirable. I like those gaps filled. I have already filled the inside edge of this corner with extra thick super glue to give it better support, but now I want to finish off the external edge by filling the gaps with putty. Once the plastic putty is dried, I then remove the excess. Very little putty remains. It's just in the gaps of that sawtooth, so it creates this nice smooth finish. The FlyHawk Photo Etch Detail Upgrade Kit provides a section of railing specifically for the top of the structure. It has edges scored into it, so it makes it very easy to bend. It does fit the top of the structure quite well, which I appreciate, so it's quite easy to glue down. Once I'm happy with the fit of the railing on the structure, I then hold it in place gently and apply extra thin super glue to one of the edges using a wire. I then move on to the next edge, slowly working my way around the structure, ensuring that each edge is properly stuck down. There is a little bit of excess glue on the sides, which I then clean up using 400 grit sandpaper. The next thing to prepare are a series of ladders or stairways. These photo etch ladders are very delicate and are actually quite difficult to fold with tweezers. There is quite a high chance that you get the posts out of alignment. This is why I use a photo etch folding tool to fold ladders. They are simple to fold, but it's very important to not move the posts out of alignment. Once I've folded the railings up, I then hold them in my hand upside down and use my hobby knife to push out each of the steps on the staircase. At this point, nothing is stuck down at this level, and the reason for that is I want to be sure that these ladders align properly at the base. The reason why I'm checking this is because this kit came with plastic ladders that had a section at the top at the landing that extended a bit into the opening, and when I was preparing these parts, I cut that stepped section out. That means the ladders that go through a plastic deck sit a little bit further back than they would have if the model was built as designed. Since this photo detail upgrade kit is designed to align with the model, I figured that it might be the case that then this ladder that goes through all the way up to the upper deck would then be misaligned at the base. If you look at photos of this area of the ship, you can see that these ladders should start at the same position on the lower deck. This is not happening at present because of that gap that I opened up previously. This means that I now need to make that gap a little bit smaller on the upper deck such that the ladder sits forward a bit to get them into alignment. To do that, I'll install a small section of styrene stock. This is 1.5 millimeters wide. With some careful cutting and adjusting, I'm able to get this section of stock to be the precise width of this gap, and I am able to simply glue it in with extra thin plastic cement, and then once that has set, paint over it with XF82. The next thing that I want to prepare before I start gluing anything down are the railings. This kit does not have dedicated railings for this forward superstructure, and I'm a bit concerned that there is actually not enough railing in this kit to make it around the entire ship. So I've decided that I'm going to scavenge railing from other kits. As long as the railing is the right height as the splinter shield and looks correct, I'm going to use it. In this case, I found quite a lot of suitable railing from the RN Roma kit that I built previously. After painting the railings, since I have paint in the airbrush, I also paint the structures that I had previously constructed. It'll be a bit easier to paint them off of the model and then install them, rather than trying to paint them while they are on the model, especially the ladders. Now that everything is painted, I need to prepare sections for installation. I measured out this gap and it's roughly 5 segments, or actually precisely 5 segments. So I cut out 5 segments, didn't do a test fit, and it fits really well. This section is now going to be my measuring tool, so I can work out how many sections I need for the lower platforms. The gap between the signal lockers requires 7 sections and a 2-rung railing, so I cut out a section of that. Once again, it aligns really well. 5 segments goes in the center portion and then 2 on the outer portions that get bent aft. However, those are going to be a bit too long and will need to be cut to length. I'll do that later during installation. Since these segments do not have score lines in them, it does make folding them a bit more tricky. Once again, I think the best way to fold them is to use a photo etch folding tool. It's quite important to get the bend to be square, and it's far easier to square that corner using a photo etch folding tool. A quick test fit shows that it is going to fit nicely. While we're looking at these images, you will notice that this is the old position for the signal lockers. It was during this process that I got the information for the corrections of the positions of the signal lockers. So I had not made that correction at this point. Later on in this video, when it comes to the installation of this section of railing, you'll see the signal lockers in their correct location. The final section of railing I'm going to install is at this upper level. It's a bit more complicated since it has more folds on it. It's also in a far more constrained space, so it's a bit more difficult to measure, and I was unable to find a section of railing that perfectly aligns the stanchions with the corners. So I'm going to have to be more careful with measuring and folding it into position. In this case, I use tape to mark where the corner should be. Tape is just easy to move, so I use it to estimate a position it on the section of platform to see if the tape aligns with the corners. If it doesn't, adjust the position of the tape. If it does, great, I can fold on the edge of the tape. After repeating that a few times, I get the positions right and I fold the railing using the photo etch folding tool. I'm also now happy with the fit of this railing. This means I can now proceed with installation. To install the railing, I place it in its position without glue, and then apply extra thin super glue to the edge to bond it in place. I'll start with the lowest railing so that it is not obstructed by work that has to happen above it, and then slowly work my way up. Once the railing is in place on this platform, I then install the corresponding ladders. These had been previously prepared quite some time ago. They are finally getting installed. I position them in their location dry and then glue them down using extra thin super glue. Moving upwards, I then place the railing on the middle platform and glue it down using extra thin super glue. Once it's in place, I then install the ladders in the same fashion as I did before. With the ladders in place, I can then install the rectangular structure. I don't want to get glue on the exterior of this part, so I'm going to glue it down with extra thick super glue, which I apply to the sides of the raised plastic section. I then place the structure over the raised section and push it into the glue. I then do a quick test fit with the Admiral's bridge, which shows that everything is correctly positioned, which means I can move on to the last section of railing to close off the Admiral's platform. Once again, I put it in position dry and then apply extra thin super glue to the edge to bond it in place. There is a bit of touch-up that is required to clean up the glue in this area. I did have to rework the middle railing as well, which made it a little bit messy. To fix that, I use a file to just sand off the excess glue and a little bit of surfacer to fill in the gaps. Once the filing is done, I then touch up any damaged sections of railings and the edge of the plastic using a brush and XF53. I did notice that there was one ladder that I forgot to install in the center of the platform for the Admiral's bridge, so I then quickly installed that, and with that conclude the work for this video. In the next video, I'll continue to move upwards on the forward superstructure. I think the time has come to install the Admiral's bridge onto the Admiral's platform. If you would like to support this channel or see how the ship looks when it is completed, then please subscribe. Thanks for watching. Cheers.